Skip Weber at the Weber Automotive Group.
We sell every Equinox and every Trax we can get. We can't keep them on the lot. They're so great. Production is good. Those are both imported, built in Mexico and Korea, so supply chain is still a little bit low. Chevrolet is moving the Equinox production back into the U.S., so that'll be good for us. We'll be able to get even more of them. It's going to take a little bit of time for that to finalize. We could always use more, and when we get enough, the Equinox is the best-selling vehicle in St. Louis without even a close second. And right now, the Trax could probably be there too because it's the least expensive vehicle you can buy of any brand. You got digital screen, you got all the options, nice radio, nice stereo, lots of room for what you think is a small vehicle. Really, really nice. So those are both total winners, and I know for a fact every other brand is jealous of those two vehicles. They wish they could compete with those two when we have enough of them.
Granite City, Columbia, Illinois, Olive and 270, and online at WeberChevrolet.com. The Weber Automotive Group.
You know this whole thing about, you ever meet someone famous and you tell your friends and then they say, well, what was he like? Because all they really want to hear is that he was a prick. So they like to say Tom Cruise is the nicest guy in Hollywood. And I always think, well, if I was making $8 million a film, I'd be nice too. Jesus Christ. But I'm not sure he is that nice. Because I always read these articles about how he's so insular and he's into his Scientology and he, stays at a hotel, won't make eye contact with anyone in the hotel because he doesn't want to talk about the plots to his new films. Apparently, as if staring Tom Cruise in the face, he would just crack under pressure. What are you staring at? Hey, you want to hear about my new film? Ever seen a Tom Cruise film like he couldn't figure out the plot in about 18 seconds? Oh, Christ. He's a cocktail maker. He's a pretty good cocktail maker, too. Till he has a crisis of confidence and can't make cocktails anymore. Then he meets a good-looking woman who talks him into being a better cocktail maker. A riveting piece of cinema that was. Then he's a race car driver. Pretty good race car driver, too. Till he has a crisis of confidence. Can't race cars anymore. Then he meets a good-looking woman who talks him into being a better race car driver. Then he's a jet pilot. So we're starting to see a pattern emerge here. Pretty good jet pilot? Yes, he was. Until he had a crisis of confidence, couldn't fly jets anymore. Then I believe he met a good-looking woman who talked him into being a better jet pilot. Then he was a sports agent. Then he was the brother of a retarded guy. He was a pretty good brother of a retarded guy. Until he had a crisis of confidence. He wasn't so sure he was such a good brother of a retarded guy. And then he met a good-looking woman who talked him into being a better brother of a retarded guy. Then he was some kind of, I don't know what he's in now, War of the Worlds. Maybe he fights the world. You know what? I bet he's a pretty good world fighter. But at some point he'll probably have a crisis of confidence. You're going to meet a good-looking woman who convinces him it's okay to fight the world. Could be a Scrabble player for all I care. He's a pretty good Scrabble player. Till he draws all vowels. Has a crisis of consonants. And he meets a lovely Welsh woman who teaches him a lot of words he's never heard before.
No, I'm just getting warmed up.
Real behind-the-scenes stories and tall tales from back in the day. From a guy who was there for all of it. It's JC's Sunday Showgram on NewsTalkSTL. And now, here's JC.
What time is it? God, I hate this. I hate it. I hate it more in the spring than I do in the fall because at least in the fall you get an extra hour of sleep. That one in the spring, that's the killer. Even though it's going to make things better because there's going to be more daylight. And everybody seems to agree that having more daylight is better than having more dark, but nobody will do anything about it. Every couple of years, you hear somebody say, some legislator or something, oh, we're going to get rid of this because it's out of date and the farmers and all this sort of stuff. And it never happens. And so here we are again We are in the 7 o'clock hour. And because you demanded it, we're going to go back in the mid-'80s. When I was on K-Sheet, we used to do this thing every year, twice a year actually, because you had one in the spring and one in the fall. We would put together a scenario. Of course, now you have DVRs and digital equipment and everything. They do everything automatically. When the time changes, the machine does it all by itself. You don't have to do anything. If you have clocks around your house, and I think most people do, you got to go around the house and change the times on all the clocks. And the one in the car, that's the one. You ever get in a car with somebody and you're like, wait a minute, are we an hour late? They're like, no, I don't know how to run my clock. So this is just leftover from the last daylight savings. So I just wait 6 months and then it'll be right again. Those are all the same people who had 12 o'clock flashing on their VCRs back in the day. But I don't want to give too much of this away right now. We'll do it a little bit later on the show. But the scenario, plain and simple, was I'm going out of town for the weekend. It's the weekend that daylight saving runs out. Now, I also want to record 60 Minutes, which comes on at 6 o'clock on CBS. So, knowing that the time is going to change Saturday into Sunday, but I won't be there to do anything about it, and I want to set my VCR to record at 6 o'clock, what time do I set the VCR for? Is it 5 o'clock? Is it 7 o'clock? We had some people insisting it was still 6 o'clock. Anyhow, like I said, I don't want to give too much away. I want to set this up beautifully for later on in the show. We'll be here for the next 2 hours. If you're new to the station or new to the show, this is JC's Sunday Showgram. We do a music show every Saturday night from 6 until 9 o'clock here on 101.5, 94.1, and the NewsTalkSTL app. But we come back on Sunday morning. We tell old stories. We tell old stories of funny stuff that happened. Like the intro said, I've been around for all of it, and the statute of limitations pretty much has run out. And so we tell stories and we tell the truth. The stories are so goofy to begin with, I don't have a fertile enough imagination to make some of this stuff up. Trust me, you're giving me way more credit than I deserve, okay? This stuff, I can tell you, happened. And it happened as I will relate to you for the next 2 hours. Also, we're going to talk about lawsuits today. If you got a copy of the Post-Dispatch back in the day and you were paying any sort of attention, you know that from time to time I would find myself in the throes of legal situations. And we're going to tell you at least a couple of them here today. I don't have time to tell all of them. I don't want to sound like Wapner here, okay? So that'll be coming up a little later on as well. And also a review, well, actually not just a review, but also sort of a correction. There's people getting all bent out of shape over the ending to this new Catherine Bigelow movie called A House of Dynamite. And I'm going to review it for you a little bit later on in the show. But there are people who said, I loved everything about it except the ending. I really hated the ending. I think it was a cop-out. I'm going to tell you why I think that thinking is off base. And I think I got reasons that will back it up. So we'll do that too. This whole thing backed up by the Weber Automotive Group with 3 locations, Granite City, Columbia, Illinois, Olive and 270, and online at WeberChevrolet.com. They also have a Ford dealership in Metro East. And if you have some sort of a business where you need delivery vehicles and vans and things like that, sort of not necessarily things you see on your average car lot, they got all that stuff at the Ford dealership run by Weber over in Granite City. So you got to check them out too if that's what you need. As we do every week here on JC's Sunday Showgram, we begin the show with the weekend pickup, little bits and pieces, goofy stories that may have flown under your radar over the last few days. And we begin with the Cold War. This was primarily back in the 50s and 60s, where the United States and Russia were just constantly at each other and scared everybody because they're like, well, maybe the next war isn't going to be like all the previous war. The next war is just going to be a big mushroom cloud, and that's going to be it. Cold War made people do some crazy stuff. The United States government was so desperate to defeat communism that in the 1960s, the CIA spent 5 years and $20 million trying to turn house cats into Soviet spies. They planned to They planned to implant microphones, antennas, and transmitters inside the cats, but only one cat ended up making it into the field, and it was hit by a taxi before it was able to do any spying. Stooges?
Can you spell cat? Certainly. Spell it. Cat. Kitty. Push me.
Back in the 90s, BMW had to recall their GPS navigation system in Germany because German men refused to take directions from a female voice. Some real Renaissance men over there. There's a town called Zilwaukee in Michigan. The founders chose the name in 1848 to try to confuse people who were planning to move to Milwaukee so that they would accidentally move there instead. You know that this stuff has got to be true because, like I said, I don't have a fertile enough imagination to come up with stuff like this on my own. IKEA opening 10 mini locations inside Best Buy stores in Florida and Texas. They're going to showcase stuff from their kitchen and laundry room lines. They're hoping people shopping for a fridge will decide to also redesign their kitchen. I love Jennifer Lawrence. I love everything about her. Free spirit. I don't know that I would want her to be my woman because she is a little bit out there from time to time. I think you'd agree, but I still like her. And after 2 pregnancies, she says, "Get my boobs done." Here's the quote. "Everything bounced back pretty much after the first one. Second one, nothing bounced back." End quote. A woman who once actually had her butt x-rayed to prove that those giant things weren't implants. She's selling lollipops that promote vaginal health. Before you get your mind in the gutter, you administer them orally like lollipops. This Morgan Wallen guy is cracking me up. If he had anybody around him that knew what the hell they were doing, they would have said a long time ago, just admit it, own it, get it over with, and move on. But he doesn't want to admit that he threw a chair off the balcony of a hotel last year in Nashville. He's been denying it. Finally, they came up with a camera, the security camera, which shows him taking the couch and throwing it off the balcony. And even though we've seen it, he still won't cop to the whole thing. And speaking of cops, now as more information comes out about this thing, because he's just letting this thing bleed him to death, he's got to get it over with and move on, or this thing is we're still going to be talking about it a year from now. At one point, he asked the cops if his hair looked decent before they took his mugshot. For those of you planning to make major investments in the baby oil industry, Diddy's official prison release date is May 8th of 2028. I spotted this actress, Ana de Armas. Oh, God, it had to be 5 years ago. And I was like, watch out for this chick. There's just something about her. She's Cuban. She played Marilyn Monroe, about 2 years ago. She seems to have a lot of range. She is absolutely beautiful. She's adorable. I've seen her on the talk shows. She's a lot of fun, and that's why I was really stunned a couple of months ago when I found out that she was boinking Tom Cruise. But that just broke up maybe, a week ago? And sources are claiming that Tom Cruise, he just can't get his head around the idea that she didn't want him. And I've told you before, he's down here in Tampa all the time because the Scientologists' world headquarters is about, 15, 20 minutes down the street from me in Clearwater. And I've been told on numerous occasions that he's here all the time, and out at the airport has a hangar full of sports cars, like these $300,000 and $400,000 sports cars. And so when he's in town, he's got something to drive. Anyhow, you know that woman who published the book, we're getting a lot of information on the Jeffrey Epstein thing. She passed away, but now people are digging further and further into this whole thing. And she says, now she's not saying it herself, she's quoting Ghislaine Maxwell. She says that Ghislaine Maxwell, or Helene, or whatever the hell is the correct pronunciation of that name, Ghislaine, that's where all the trouble started as far as I'm concerned. You got a name like that when you're a little kid and you're constantly having to deal with that and spell it for people and have to explain the pronunciation since you were old enough to, go to kindergarten at 5 years old? That's when the trouble started. You got to be careful what you name a baby. There's consequences. Anyhow, this Virginia chick is saying that Ghislaine, we'll try that one too. Maxwell bragged about performing a sex act on George Clooney, but George Clooney says, I never even met this chick, and he is furious. And are we going to see some lawsuits flying around? New report says the average American spends nearly 48% of their paycheck within the first 48 hours, and 35% of their check is gone within the first 12 hours. There's a couple of airports I've been in where the food is really, really good. Nashville is one of them. I think it was Austin. Yeah, I think it was Austin, Texas. I had to change planes there once, and it was like, wow, you can really get good food here. I would have to say that Lambert is probably one of the worst. Anyhow, most popular airport snacks, Oreos, Jack Link's beef jerky, and Cheeto Puffs. Maybe that's the reason why people are having to take up 2 seats on the airplane. And speaking of flying, and I never would have guessed it would cost this much, a Delta airline flight attendant made a big mistake during a flight last Saturday. He accidentally deployed the emergency slide at the gate. Nobody was hurt, but for whatever reason, it's going to cost the airline $70,000. I think it might have something to do with the fact that those things, I think, you can only use them once. Once they deploy, it's like trying to get a genie back in the bottle. It just can't happen. So you got to junk the whole thing and put a new one in and install it, and there goes your $70,000. If you sleep with a nightlight on, or a TV, or a lamp, or anything like that, you're killing yourself. People with the darkest bedrooms have the lowest risk of heart attack and stroke. If you sleep with a nightlight or the TV on, you got a 20% higher risk. And change your passwords. About 183 million Gmail accounts were compromised following a major data breach that revealed not just the passwords, but all your information and everything like that earlier this year. Thanks for telling us now. All right, birthdays this weekend. Julia Roberts had only one chance to interview her. She wasn't a very happy time in her life, and she also knew that the movie stunk. The movie was called Something to Talk About. And if you're saying, I never even heard of that movie, yeah, that was part of the problem. And I don't think she smiled once in the interview. And I think it was also just about the time the Lyle Lovett stuff was sort of reaching its peak. But that girl's got a giant mouth. I mean, what was that TV series back in the 80s? I think it was called V, where the alien could unhinge her jaw and she ate an entire otter or something. Julia Roberts is 58. Andy Richter from Conan's show, funny guy and a nice guy, by the way. We interviewed him when he was here in town for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game a couple of years back, and he was playing on the celebrity softball team. He's 59 this weekend. Jamie Gertz, you know about her? She was a little girl back then. She was on Square Pegs. She was in 16 Candles, The Lost Boys, Less Than Zero. She was Gary Cole's wife on Entourage. She came into St. Louis years ago, and I got a chance to meet her. You know, she's from Chicago. She married into some sort of family, and apparently Jamie Gertz right now is worth something like $3 billion with a B, $3 billion. She's 60 and obviously can afford to fix anything that is wrinkled or sagging. Bill Gates, 70. Caitlyn Jenner, 76. Dennis Franz, famous for his NYPD blue butt. He's 81. And a couple of years back, when Harry Carey was ill and they had celebrities coming in every game up at Wrigley Field to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game before it became an ongoing tradition, they brought in Dennis Franz, and it happened to be Mother's Day.
Bunch for Harry, and for all you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. And a one, and a
mothers.
two, and
You mothers out there.
take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the
You think that was bad? There were worse ones. Mike Ditka.
and a two, and a three. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. All these happy take back your Jackson. I don't care if I ever get back. I will run them for the whole team. If they don't win it, it's shame. 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out at the old ball game.
I guess that's what you would call spirited. And then this one, God, I hate to do this, but they invited Chuck Berry. And as you're listening to this, you might have to remind yourself that Chuck Berry spent his entire life as a musician, a singer.
And it's time to stretch. Let's welcome Rock and Roll Hall of Fame legend Chuck Berry to guest conduct our 7th stretch.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's go Chicago. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the ground. Buy me some peanuts and jack. Don't care if I never get back. Root for the whole team. And when it's a shame, so it's 1, 2, 3 shots, you're out. Let me go, boy. Yeah.
Maybe the wind off the lake threw off his inner ear or something. I have no idea. Jesus. He was a singer, for God's sakes. Oh, God, that's enough. That's the weekend pickup. That's how we start the show here every Sunday morning on JC's Sunday Showgram. What do you want to go? Oh, you know what? Let's do House of Dynamite, because this is a really good story. This is this movie on Netflix, and a lot of people are grousing. Oh, look at the grouse. A lot of people are grousing about the ending of the movie. I'll have something to say about that. We'll give you a review of A House of Dynamite coming up next on JC's Sunday Showgram. Stick around.
The A-List Interview
I'm a man who likes talking to a man who likes to talk.
on JC's Wayback Machine.
Joe Buck on his unusual relationship with his partner in the booth, Troy Aikman.
He's just such a perfectionist. It drives me nuts. It's not exactly the Odd Couple and Felix and Oscar, but I'm more messy, sloppy. My notes are kind of all over the place, and his penmanship and everything is just so buttoned down and perfect. So if I go to the bathroom during a break, I'll wait until the last second to come back because I like to see him panic if the team's going to kick off and I'm not there.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Showgram.
It's JC's Sunday Showgram on NewsTalkSTL.
Heard Casey Musgraves about 2 years ago. I know a lot of you discovered her a lot sooner than that, but it took me a while. She falls under that Americana heading, and that stuff is still on the fringe. I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but it's what I think. But she is remarkable and easy on the eyes. See, and here's the irritating thing about the radio business, because back in the day when I got into radio, and I'd be up doing morning shows on these little FM stations in small towns, but we played everything that was musical, if it was at all rock/folk /sort of popish / it doesn't always necessarily fall under a heading. And so, you know, all that Joni Mitchell stuff and Judy Collins and James Taylor and Carole King, especially in the morning, we would take it easy on people. Now you get up 6:30 in the morning and they're playing AC/DC. I'm sorry, that's not how I start my day. And when I started doing this show, I really had to think about it for a while, because on Saturday night, the expectation on the the Wayback Machine, the expectation is rock-based stuff, so that's what we do. But here on Sunday morning, I don't know, I just think it's an open field. I think you're going to hear some things from time to time that you haven't heard me play in previous incarnations of various radio stations and morning shows that I've done. We're going to surprise you once in a while. If the music is good, it's going to get played. And 90% of what I'm doing on this show on Sunday morning is talk, me telling stories and everything like that. But when we do break to play a song, give me a little break, and give you a little break, I'm just thinking it could be almost anything these days. So I hope you enjoyed that. I suspect you will hear more of Casey Musgraves. She was the musical guest on Saturday Night Live about a year ago. I suspect she'll be back too. She's got a long, healthy career ahead of her. All right, let's talk about this movie a little bit. I think there's a misconception about movie critics that, you guys don't like anything. You go in there and you just want to rip up everything you see. And yeah, I mean, there's some people like that, and I don't like them either. The truth of the matter is, I get much more excited about telling you about a movie that is fantastic that I really want you to see. That's why the job is fun. Oh, I'll let you know when something stinks too, and you don't want to waste your money on it. But yeah, we get much more excited as a community of movie critics about something that's good. And in this case, it is the new Netflix movie called A House of Dynamite. Now, this is Catherine Bigelow's movie. She made The Hurt Locker, and she made the Osama bin Laden thing called Zero Dark 30. Both of those movies absolutely excellent, and so is this. A House of Dynamite. And we'll talk about the ending in just a couple of seconds because it's ruffling some feathers here. Anyhow, I consider this a near perfect film. We already know that the United States of America got caught with its pants down on 9/11, and then everybody started running around shutting barn doors after the horses were gone, and that's why we have to take off our shoes at the airport. Goofy Richard Reed, the shoe bomber. Thanks, buddy. I don't want to get my hands around your neck because of your attempt to blow up an airplane. I want to tie you to a chair and one by one pick out your nose hairs because of all this crap at the airport. Thanks for nothing. Anyhow, yeah, the 9/11 stuff has been well documented, and this movie legitimately asks a question. That's what the movie is. It is a big question, and that question is, are we ready, really, after billions of dollars that have been poured into the Defense Department since, we were kids, and all this military hardware and might and planes and rockets and submarines and all that sort of stuff? What happens if we really do find ourselves under attack someday? Now, if you went to a good school, you were required to read the book Failsafe, and if you didn't read the book, maybe you at least saw the movie Henry Fonda, Walter Matthau, of all people, and Larry Hagman. Yes, that Larry Hagman from I Dream of Jeannie. He played the interpreter in the movie, and I got goosebumps even thinking about the movie. I just happened to watch it about 2 months ago, and it really holds up. And then you had War Games, which was sort of a fun way of looking at the whole computer and technological issue that, some, 15-year-old kid can wreak havoc with NORAD. And that was a very, very good movie. Don't get me wrong. I think War Games is a great movie. It's just not a drama like The Hurt Locker or Zero Dark 30 or something like that. Sort of a low-tech presentation on that. Well, A House of Dynamite takes it all, same story, but employs all of the technological and special effects available to a really, really gifted director here in the modern day. And she hit this one out of the park. Now, the ending, which some people are complaining about. As I said, don't. And let me put it this way. Some people criticize Failsafe because they said there's no way a United States president would ever, under any circumstances, ever approve dropping a bomb on New York. It wasn't the other side that did it. It was us. The president said, okay, we accidentally bombed Moscow, so we're going to drop a bomb on New York so that, there's not some sort of complete obliteration of the planet. And some people, as I said, thought that was totally implausible. So you can't have that argument and then complain about this movie, too. The movie is a question. It's a 2-hour question. We've been told all these years by our government and our Defense Department that we are safe. And whether it's Moscow or some rogue nation or somebody we can't even identify, if they launch something at us, don't worry. We got all these interceptor missiles and everything and all these heat-seeking missiles, and don't worry about it. We'd blow that thing out of the sky in the first 10 seconds. Well, it turns out that may not be the case. I know it's only a movie. It's not a documentary, but it's pretty damn close. This thing plays it as real as can be and also poses, like I said, one big question, but a lot of little questions along the way. Because ultimately, when it lands in somebody's lap and you only have a couple of minutes to decide what to do, how would it be handled? All the acting is fantastic. All the special effects are amazing. The story is riveting. I decided to watch this thing the other night, and I was really, really tired, and I figured, well, maybe I'll watch the first half hour, 45 minutes or something, but I'm starting to fall asleep here, so I probably won't make it through the movie. Well, guess what? Not only did I make it through the movie, I think I was up for about the next 5 hours just thinking about it. Again, the movie is called A House of Dynamite, directed by Catherine Bigelow, and available right now on Netflix. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 corks. Not a lot of movies I give that high a rating to, but this thing is sensational.
27 people were injured this week after they were told to spring ahead and fall back.
Well, like I was saying a little while ago, every couple of years somebody comes along and says, we got to get rid of this daylight saving thing, and they never do. But I will tell you, it's very, very funny, because back in the 80s, when you had a VCR, all right, I went into so many people's homes, and you look over by the TV, and there's the VCR flashing 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock. It was just beyond some people's ability to figure out how to program the clock on the VCR. For those of you who did know how to do it, you'll like this story. Now we live in a digital world, and these things are smart. I'm talking about DVRs and everything, TVs, whatever. And the clocks change themselves twice a year for daylight saving. You don't have to do anything. Aha. But back in the day of stupid VCRs, I was faced with a real problem. I had a girlfriend living in the Indianapolis area, and sometimes I would leave for the weekend to go spend a couple of days with her. And one of the weekends was coming up, and I'm a fan of 60 Minutes, and I wanted to make sure to record 60 Minutes on my VCR before I left for the weekend. But then it dawned on me, wait a minute, this is the weekend where it's spring ahead, fall back. What time do I set the VCR for? We're going to lose an hour here. Let's just use the fall as an example. You spring ahead, but you fall back, which means that before you go to bed on Saturday night or first thing in the morning on Sunday, you set your clocks back 1 hour. If it says 10 a.m., you program the VCR and all of the other clocks and everything like that. Again, this is like 1985. And you program everything and you go back, okay, it's not 10 o'clock, it's actually 9 o'clock. And everybody, I think, has had that sensation of having to run around the house and fix all those clocks. But like I said, what do you do when you fall back in the fall? I'm going to record 60 Minutes. That comes on at 6 o'clock. Do I set it for 5? Do I set it for 7? Then we started taking calls. That was a big mistake. Then people started saying, no, you set it for 6 o'clock. Like, how can that be right? The time is going to change. It's not going to stay still. And people were calling up and just screaming at me, insisting that they were right. No, you set it for 6 o'clock, JC. And like, look, we know that that's wrong. It's either 5 or it's 7. It's got to be one of the two. Which one is it? We went for hours that morning with people insisting that they knew how. And then finally, some guy called in and he explained it the best way I think that anybody could, so much so that when I'm explaining to people, I still use this guy's example. When you get up on Sunday morning and you haven't changed any of the clocks the night before, and you look at the clock and it says 10 a.m., it's really 9. Similarly, on Sunday night, back in the 80s, when I would get back into St. Louis at maybe 9 o'clock at night, I haven't touched any of the clocks, so all of them are going to say 9 o'clock. But it's really only 8. And that's what you use to answer the big question of what's right, 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. to set your VCR. So use 60 Minutes airtime as an example. It's 6 o'clock. So me on the road driving back from the Indianapolis area, my VCR doesn't know what's going on. It's just a dumb machine. So when 60 Minutes comes on at 6 p.m., again, I haven't touched the clock on the VCR. What is it going to read? 5 o'clock is really 4. 6 o'clock is really 5. 7 o'clock is really 6. So the correct answer, and this is only good in the fall, the correct answer as to what time you would set your VCR for to record 60 Minutes at 6 o'clock is actually 7 p.m. because your VCR doesn't know any better. It's just clicking along like any clock does, and it's 7 o'clock. But no, everybody else, the rest of the world, set their clocks back. So 7 o'clock is really 6. The answer is 7 p.m. And in the spring, you reverse it. Did that make any sense to anybody, or did I give you a headache?
For a hole in your head or a whole new head, J.C. Corcoran, He's back.
It's JC's Sunday Showgram on NewsTalkSTL.
Over the last 42 years since I got to St. Louis, you have probably read or heard somebody talking about the fact that I've spent a little time in court. And there have been stupid things that people threw at me that just got thrown out. And there are other ones that made really big splashes. I don't have time to tell you all of them. Like, I got sued once by, well, what they said was the steamed heat dancers, the Big Red Line. Those were the cheerleaders that used to cheer on our old football team, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Big Red. And they were basically the same girls who also showed up at the St. Louis Steamers games. Slobo Ilyevsky. Yeah, we remember those days. So we're working at the classic rock station KSD, and we get invited to participate in something called Scoops of Fun down at Union Station. And it's just one of these big family events. You come down there, it's a bunch of ice cream vendors, and you come down and you eat ice cream, and that's it, and Scoops of Fun. And I was going to be broadcasting live there, and also the Steamed Heat Dancers were going to be there. And as soon as KMOX found out that I was going to be there, they pulled the Steamed Heat Dancers from the event. And that was in the papers, and this big, bad, mean J.C. Corcoran, they had to, to keep these girls away from him. And I was reading the story on the paper about what they did, and I was like, well, they can do whatever they want, but it's common knowledge I banged two of them anyhow. Well, now, here comes the lawsuit. The Steamed Heat Dancers are suing J.C. Corcoran, big bad J.C. Corcoran. I'm like, what do you mean the Steamed Heat Dancers are? There's like 20 of them, and we're having a hard time finding out who was behind all of this. Well, your first guess was probably right. Remember the name Bob Hyland? This guy's been dead for 30 years, and there are still people who refer to him as Mr. Hyland. Like if they call him Bob, he's just going to rise out of the grave and go, "What did you call me?" So stupid. So this thing went all the way to depositions. I'm sitting there, and their lawyers are sitting there asking me questions, and you got to go through all of this stuff, and then they finally get down to the heart and soul, to the meat of the case, and then they start asking you very, very pointed questions about what you said and what you meant and how irresponsible and dangerous you are for saying that. And then about, 45 minutes into the deposition, it was that magical moment when their lawyer said, "And you knew when you said that, Mr. Corcoran, that it wasn't true. Isn't that correct?" And I said, "No, it was correct." And everybody in the room just stopped. Even the chick was running the, the type-in thing, court recorder thing. Everybody just stopped and looked at me like, "What?" And he says, "Excuse me, I just want to make sure I get this right. Are you claiming to have had sex with two of the Steamed Heat Dancers?" And I said, "Yeah." They go, "And you're under oath. You know that, right?" I'm like, "Of course." We're going to have to take a little break. Yeah, everybody is buzzing around the room because if you know anything about, slander and libel and things like that, the lawyers always say, truth is the ultimate defense. So now these guys don't know what to do. He's claiming to have had sex with two of the girls. And if you're saying to yourself, well, why, JC, would you say something like that in a court deposition when you knew you were under oath? And the answer is, because I did. I'm not going to tell you their names, so you'll never guess what happened. The whole thing got dismissed. Felt like ringing a bell and yelling, "Next!" And I didn't have to wait a long time because back in 1993, I got asked to do an appearance on a Friday night before a Cardinal baseball game for, I think it was, cystic fibrosis, I believe it was. And we're, fundraiser and raising awareness to the whole thing. And you just set up like 5 to 7 from the grounds of they used to call it the Millennium Hotel, about a block and a half from the ballpark. And I was just out there on the lawn, and we were just playing music and having fun and talking to people, and everything's going great. Keep in mind now, this is a charity. And unlike, I think, pretty much everybody that I have known on the radio in St. Louis has taken money from charities except me. I've never taken a dime. There was one instance where the Salvation Army people bought some commercial time, and that money had to go to me, and I just took it right back and put it in the kettle. But other than that, I've never accepted a dime. I just feel that that's sort of wrong. If it's a charity, you're supposed to be giving your time for that charity. You don't take money from a charity, but everybody else in St. Louis did. They just were, I don't know, maybe they were just raised different than me. You don't take money from, like friends of kids with cancer. You just don't do it. But everybody does it. Everybody but me. It's sort of like Nutrisystem. Remember that stuff? You sign up for this thing and then they send you food and it's like a little bagel the size of a $50. Here's your breakfast. Or the other one. Oh, God. The other one was Body Solutions. Body Solutions. That was the one. And I don't think I knew anybody who was on the air in St. Louis at that time that wasn't taking money from Body Solutions. All you do is you take this stuff in the bottle, you pour it into a glass of water, and you drink that after your last meal every night, and the weight just falls right off, and it turns your fat into lean muscle. That's what the commercial said. That's what all these people were reading. And I'm like, I'm not going to go on the air and say that. I'll pay a lot of money. I remember seeing one gal that I worked with. She showed me the check that she got from Body Solutions. It was $22,000. So it was a nice chunk of change I was passing on, but I got to be able to look at myself in the mirror, right? Apparently everybody else in St. Louis radio can look at themselves in the mirror and not have a problem with it. I still remember when Body Solutions finally went out of business, because the federal government came after him and said, wait a minute, just hold on. And it basically shut him down. And Mark Cox, who was a reporter at Channel 4 at the time, came over and did an interview with me for the news because I was the only person on the air in St. Louis who didn't take money from Body Solutions. And they saw that as a story, which I think was probably a pretty good idea. And I'm not claiming to be some sort of a saint or some sort of an angel or something like that. I'm just saying there are just certain lines I don't cross. It doesn't matter if everybody else crosses them. I don't cross them. And taking money from charities just is sort of against my religion, okay?
I'm trying to get into inventing, and that's hard. I know what I'm going to try to invent, I don't know if I'm being overly ambitious, but I'm trying to invent an ironing board that when you open it, it doesn't sound like this. Every ironing board I've ever opened sounds like a witch being boiled in oil. You ever just look at an ironing board? Can you imagine getting that approved in today's safety-conscious world? What did you want to get an approval on? I call it an ironing board. I want to have like a surfboard-shaped device about this high, and I want to support it with two thin crisscrossing poles so the center of gravity is precariously high. So the slightest nudge would be sure to topple it. Then I want to put a big hot metal thing on the top of that with water, the temperature of lava oozing out the sides and dripping off the board for burn wounds. I want one side to be a white hot heat for scarring. I want the sheer weight to be able to cause blunt force trauma. And I want the whole thing to come to a point for puncture wounds. It seems a little unsafe for adults. I'm not finished. I want a cord coming down so you get the toddlers involved. Why are we allowed to have these? I was reading about the walkie-talkie, and I read it was a military invention. That surprised me, because usually military stuff has strong names, Apache helicopter, Tomahawk missile. Walkie-talkie? How did that slip through the system? It's a general talking to some guy. What do you have there, soldier? Well, it's a new communication device. It's untethered, which will enable the troops to speak effectively when they're in the field. What's it called? Walkie-talkie. Look, I'm walkie and I'm talking. Now you walkie-and-talkie, General. I'm walkie-and-talkie. Are you walkie-and-talkie? I like it, Solder. What's this explosive device? The whammy kablammy. And this is the Rudy Tooty aim and shoot.
The Weber Automotive Group. All right, so I left you last hour with the story about that charity event on a Friday night about a block and a half from Busch Stadium for charity cystic fibrosis, and I'm out there doing the show about 2 hours before the ball game starts, and people are coming by and saying hi. We're having a great old time, and got a wireless mic, so I figure, well, I'll go across the street over by Stadium Garage East. There's a lot of people standing around over there. I'll go talk to a couple of them, and a nice little crowd of people starts to gather around me, and I'm talking, and right in the middle of the show, some guy emerges from the crowd, some guy I'd never seen before, and lunges at me. I put up my left arm to block him. He then falls to the ground and starts going into some sort of fit like you see on the WWE or WWF. I don't watch wrestling, so I don't know what it is anymore, but you know what I mean. Sometimes these wrestlers go down and their bodies start to convulse, and this guy's laying in the street just doing that. Scared me half to death, and I just retreated back across the street and back over to the lawn in front of the hotel where we were set up doing the show. And the guy who was engineering and my co-host who was out there were like, what happened over there? I go, I don't know, some guy like jumped out of the crowd like he was going to tackle me or something. I blocked him, and that was the end of that. So as we're standing there, in the next minute or two, coming out of Stadium Garage East, all of a sudden I recognize one of the guys as one half of the Stephen D.C. Morning Show. And he's looking at me, and I'm like, what's going on? And he holds up a cell phone and very ceremoniously dials 3 numbers, as in 911. About 5 minutes later, the St. Louis police shows up. Actually, 3 squad cars showed up. And I see the cops talking to him, and then they come over to me, and they're going to arrest me and throw me in jail. On a Friday night, by the way, which would have meant I would have been in jail all weekend because everything shuts down. You wouldn't be able to see a judge until Monday morning. So I would have been in the pokey for 2 days. And I'm explaining to them what happened. They're clueless. They don't even understand what I'm doing, that I'm in the middle of a radio show for charity, no less. And they want to take me away. Well, as fate would have it, one of the police officers that showed up was Officer Sam, Karen Kelly's husband. And he gets in the middle of this whole thing, and he's like, no. These guys, there's something funny going on here. You're not throwing him in jail. And I'm like, by the way, what do they want to throw me in jail for? And they're like, well, they said that you attacked this kid. Like, I've never seen this kid. The kid lunged out of the crowd. I put my arm up. I sort of flinched, and he just ran into me and then fell down. And the broadcast is over. I go home, and it's not till a couple of days later that I find out that the guy who jumped out of the crowd was their intern and one of these little hangers-on that they would send him out to do stupid stuff, stunts, and things like that, and he was part of their show. And I guess I should mention that his on-air name just happened to be the name of my daughter, who was about 1 year old at the time. So he was using her name as his on-air name. Isn't that just lovely? We find out that the whole thing was planned by that competing radio station. At the time, it was Q104. And I figure that's it. I'm filing a lawsuit. So I sued them, and then unbelievably, they sued me back. Meanwhile, the creeps at the Riverfront Times wrote their version of the story was that I attacked this guy. And they had a writer over there who, every 6 weeks or so would resurrect this thing and take shots at me, cheap shots. And I just sort of sit there and take it. But then we finally got our day in court, or should I say days in court. It ended up being a 6-day trial. 6 days I was in that courtroom. And by the time my lawyers were done with them, I actually started to feel a little sorry for him. The kid that they brought up, the kid that jumped on me, they brought him up on the witness stand. When they were done with him, he was crying. He was crying. And I shouldn't even say crying. It was more like sobbing because he knew how screwed to the floor he was. Those guys from the radio station set him up. They made him go out and do this and then lie about it. And now he's sitting there in the witness stand and he realizes that this version of how he came out of the crowd and everything, the whole thing was such BS. And finally, on the 6th day, we had to wait, and the jury goes out, and then they come back, and they proceed to award me $370,000. $370,000. No, you're in there every day. You're not allowed to talk to the jury or really have any contact with them. You're not even really supposed to look at them. And so you don't know what they're thinking. You have no idea. And I didn't know that apparently the whole time this was going on, they were just like, oh, we cannot wait to bust these guys right across the teeth. This is going to take us 30 seconds in the jury room. I actually met one of the jurors maybe a year or two later, and he told me that they were actually going to give me $1 million. But I remember that there was one woman who sat in the same chair every single night. I guess that's what jurors do. You have to sit in the same chair. And she had these really goofed up glasses and really long, stringy gray hair. And she showed up every day in court wearing a Keishi t-shirt. And the juror told me that they were going to give me $1 million, but that she was the one that threw a wrench in it and kept saying that, no, he's guilty, he's guilty. And I guess finally she just got tired of being there and said, all right, fine, do whatever the hell you want. There's all these little subplots and all this stuff that's flying under the radar that people didn't have any idea that was going on. I was completely exonerated. And wouldn't you just know it, after the Riverfront Times and this creep that they had writing for them at the time, who wrote stories about this like every 6 weeks for almost 2 years while we were waiting for the trial, did not feel compelled to complete the story when the jury exonerated me, tagged them with 370. He just couldn't find any room in his column. To this day, the Riverfront Times never acknowledged that what they were behind was the work of creeps. Post-Dispatch covered it. The TV stations covered it. And the story does continue, but I'll save the rest of the details for some other time. I know what you're thinking. You were listening last hour and you're like, well, wait a minute. What happened with that whole thing about scoops of fun and the cheerleaders? And that just got thrown out too. But now we come to another lawsuit story, and this will be the last one of the day, I promise, because I'm tired of talking about this stuff. But, you know, when I got hired by Channel 5 back in 1985, I went in there, and there were some people I could tell that were not very pleased to see me. They had their own sort of version of what I would be like as a person, and what I would be like as a journalist, and what I would be like to work with in the Channel 5 newsroom. And a couple of times I went out of my way to try to demonstrate the idea that, look, this is my job. I get paid to rock the boat. I'm in a newsroom, I'm in a television newsroom, the #1 station in town, by the way. I'm here to do a job, and I'm going to really try to dazzle you. I'm going to get you big names. I'm going to get you big stars. I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to keep my nose to my typewriter and not cause any trouble. It's what I try to do at radio stations, but, you know, it's like that line in Godfather 3. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. So Guy Phillips and Y98, they didn't really bother me because we were trouncing them in the ratings, but they were doing some stuff. They did a thing where they pulled the wool over the eyes of the Post-Dispatch. They said that a guy that was part of their show died, and some of the listeners were like, well, that's not a real guy. That was just like a character that they made up on the show. It's not a real person. And they're like, no, it was a real person. He died. And the Post called up, and they're like, so wait a minute, we're trying to figure out what's going on here. Like, yeah, it was a real person. He died. We're really sad about it. So the Post prints the story only to find out later that it was a gag, that the guy wasn't real, and that they were just trying to see if they could get away with it, and they did. Frankly, that made the rest of us look sort of bad because you can do stunts and everything like that, but you don't lie. It's a real fast way to get in trouble. Like I said, I've always gotten in trouble. When I've gotten in trouble doing this job, it's because I was a little too clear about what actually happened. I was telling the truth a little too much. All you got to do is be on social media and you print something, you post something, and people immediately, they don't like the story, they accuse you of lying. And it's like, you must be new in town or something, because that's not what I get in trouble for. I get in trouble for the truth, not lies. I don't lie. That's the problem. I need to learn how to do that. But we were taking some, well-deserved swipes at Y98 for doing this, and we mentioned the general manager of the station, who is a very controversial person in town, a woman close friends with Karen Foss, and she was running the place. She eventually went on to run KMOX. But we were, doing a pretty good job of trashing the station, and her name came up. And about a week and a half later, I get a call from our radio station. You're getting sued by the woman who runs Y98. They're like, suing us for what? My boss was like, well, because you said she had plastic surgery, and she's suing you for, I don't know, defamation of character or something like that. And it was like $3 million or something. So I went back and listened to the show, and sure enough, that was said. There was a remark about her having plastic surgery, but what was interesting about it is I was the one getting sued. I was not the person who said it. It was my on-air partner at the time who said it. But she's not going to sue him because that wouldn't have been interesting. That wouldn't have made a big splash. She sued me. I'm like, I'm a victim of circumstance. Like, I didn't say that. But again, this thing went all the way to depositions. But right before those depositions were scheduled, the judge took a look at the case. I was told that he laughed and thought it was funny and then tossed the case out of court on what they call a summary judgment, which means this is so effing stupid that we're not letting you proceed with this thing. Forget it. Go pound sand. I still remember Donnybrook was like, well, they should have gotten him for this. They should have gotten him. And it's like, do you not understand how the legal system works? You go into court, you make your case, and the judge says, this is a bunch of BS, you lose. That's it. Well, they should have gotten him for something. What are you guys talking about? So over the years, you have heard an awful lot of things about yours truly. And I can tell you, and, again, most of this stuff is you can look up court records. You can read the stories in the newspaper. I've got all the stories on tape, that were aired by the local TV stations where they do the story and explain everything. I've got everything, and a lot of it was chronicled in my first book. And there's still people who sit there pointing a finger at me going, you did it. You did it. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're wrong. But, I always thought that Karen Foss was a little on the prissy side. Okay, fine. I know a lot of people liked watching her, and she was pretty and wore very pretty dresses and brooches and everything like that. But basically, she's reading off a teleprompter, and that's pretty much her job. She's not writing stories. In fact, one of the things that a lot of people really did not like the looks of was once when Karen Foss went to the general manager of Channel 5 and said, I don't want to be in the newsroom. I want an office upstairs where the managers are. I don't want to be in the newsroom. And because she was money in the bank for Channel 5 at that time, they let her do it. And about 15 minutes before the news started at 5 o'clock, she'd come prancing down from upstairs and go over to her desk, take a look at the scripts, and then go into the studio, sit down, and start doing the news. And don't be fooled, incidentally, by those Karen's Kids pieces. Remember those things where she's sitting there with, this little child needs a home and, one eye is blind and this kid can't walk right or whatever. It's like, don't you want to adopt this child? Oh, wouldn't that be nice? And you see Karen Foss sitting there, she's hugging the kid and they're out playing and everything. She had nothing to do with any of that except to show up for the photo shoot. One of our friends, Caroline Teasdale, was her producer, and she did all the work and then said, okay, be there at 11 o'clock and we're going to shoot the story. And Karen Foss would come, again, prancing in, sit down. They'd shoot the story. She'd get in her car and go back home. I mean, I guess it's better than not doing it at all, but it was a little disingenuous, don't you think? Well, during this whole process of this lawsuit with her friend who was running Y98, one day I come into work and she grabs me and says, I want to talk to you, and brings me down into this conference room, which was glass, so everybody in the newsroom could see into it, and they see me and Karen Foss in there, and it's very, very clear that it's an unpleasant conversation. And she's jumping all over me about this lawsuit. And, the fact that you would say that on the air, talk about somebody with plastic surgery and blah, 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 blah. And I let her, I let this windbag just, get it all out of her system. And then I said, Karen, I didn't say it. The guy in the studio with me, my on-air partner, he was the one who said it. I didn't say it, which seemed to piss her off even more. And we really never had another conversation after that. And someday I'm going to tell you, because people are like, it's pretty clear you don't like Karen Foss. Oh, I've told you 1/5 of what I could. And one of these days when we're sitting here doing this show, I'll tell you the rest of it. Moral of the story, don't get into radio. No, moral of the story, you can file a lawsuit. Good luck making it stick, you dummies.
The statute of limitations has run out. It's JC's Sunday Showgram on NewsTalkSTL.
When you're not wearing pants, it's important to start your morning right, and that means a bowl of grape nuts. Only grape nuts combines the wholesome flavors of sun-dried hay and middle school gymnastics mat to create that one-of-a-kind taste. And with a hardness rating equivalent to tourmaline and its sharp and jagged texture, you just might think you're eating a bowl of high-grade aquarium gravel. So if you're craving something indigestible and don't mind the sight of a little blood in your stool, why not reach for grape nuts? Make your teeth earn their keep with Post Grape Nuts.
So we really got hit with a double whammy here. You got two things going on. A lot of us ate way too much of the candy that the kids brought in, whether it's grandkids or nieces, nephews, neighbors, whatever. Hey, look, kids, I think out on the front lawn, that looks like Taylor Swift. Then they all go running and you grab all the candy. So you got that to deal with. And now, even though you did end up with an extra hour of sleep overnight, you got to go run around now and change all the clocks all over the house. And everybody's favorite, the one in the car, which a lot of people have no idea how to operate. Anyhow, time to talk to our buddy Skip Weber at the Weber Automotive Group. Skip, when's the last time you dressed up for Halloween?
Well, I've done a few Halloween parties. We actually dressed up last year.
Did you really?
We did. The older grandkids, we dressed up a couple times for them, but last year was his first one. So we dressed up in just some goofy costumes. It wasn't significant. And I remember when my own kids were rather young, we did the University Club in Brentwood that my parents belonged to, had a great Halloween party. I always enjoyed Halloween.
What was your costume when you dressed up last year?
I was a guy riding a dinosaur. So there was one of those, it was like an inflatable thing.
Yeah.
And it looked like, you had these fake legs on the side, and my legs were the dinosaur's legs. And I was on top of it. It was fun.
A couple of years ago, when my daughter was probably 5 or 6, I did dress up as a nun, and I did that just really to entertain her and the people in the neighborhood. I don't think I had dressed up in 20 years, maybe 30, maybe even longer than that. I don't know.
So let me ask you a question, JC. Let me ask you, we're talking about Halloween. When you were growing up, did houses make you tell a joke?
Oh, yeah. I still do it now.
Yeah, I do too. You have to tell a joke. I get told that must be a St. Louis thing, and I don't think it was.
No, absolutely not.
I have lots of people said, well, they grew up somewhere else and they didn't have to do it. But I remember episodes of sitcoms like Happy Days where they'd have a Halloween episode and they'd be talking about, and they'd be making the kids tell jokes.
Sure.
Now, if they're doing it there, that's not saying it's a Milwaukee thing. That was a national thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had it in the episode.
Well, that's funny you should bring that up, because when on that trick-or-treating thing through the neighborhood I was just talking about, my daughter was probably 4 or 5 years old, and she didn't understand the meaning of it, but she memorized it, and I said, here's your joke. So when you go to the door and people say, what's your joke? Here's what you do. And you got to remember this. The reason that this is as funny as it is because it's being delivered by a 5-year-old child.
Right.
But the joke was, what do you get when you cross an elephant with a rhinoceros? And the people, I don't know. And then she says, "Hell if I know." and people were like just spitting their coffee out and everything like that. Yeah. So it was pretty damn funny. Believe it or not, I was in Costco the other day, and it just, it felt like, oh, that's right, it's Christmas. Just unbelievable. We are about almost exactly 1 month away from Weber Chevrolet's long-standing tradition of Black Friday. Have you been already thinking about that?
We have. And I don't know if you remember this, but last year we did, our Black Friday was a weekly Friday up specials through the month. I feel that with the advent of so much by mail and online ordering of things, that the real Black Friday has lost some luster, and we do not put it all into one day or one weekend anymore. Last year's was the start of it. And we watched the stats of who came to Black Friday, even though we had just as good a deals every year, and we watched it going down. So we just said, you know what? We felt like maybe people would say, I'm going to wait till Black Friday and not buy the rest of November. And we just decided we're going to do it every Friday. And so last year we did it. It worked really, really well. So we're going to have, about 20 to 25 specials per store every Friday through the whole month of November. And no longer do we have people, have to get up at 5 a.m. to get here on Friday. But I am proud of the fact that we were the first and original, the only true automotive Black Friday. I mean, everybody tried to copy it, and they would do normal, ordinary specials that anybody could do all year long. And they'll have about 30 total that are all set up. All the programming's done. So all they got to do is pick 20 of those. And maybe they create a new one if something got surprising, but they'll pick 20 of those and put the prices in, and it just they'll have it done by Wednesday, for example.
So what is the date of the first Black Friday?
The first one will be November 8th.
Okay, so it is coming up.
Each Friday. So the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th will each have some great specials on.
And you can check the website, WeberChevrolet.com. 3 locations, Granite City, Columbia, Illinois, Olive 270, and online at WeberChevrolet.com. And for service and delivery vehicles and stuff like that, you got that Ford dealership over in Metro East. Check that out, too. Skip Weber, happy Halloween. We'll talk to you in a couple of days. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks, JC.
Where the hell did I get that, John Cryer?
Oh, my goodness. Where did you get that version of Crying?
Yeah.
I wonder.
Yes. The star of 2.5 Men, along with Charlie Sheen, John Cryer. What was that, 1987? The movie was Hiding Out.
That's the one. I actually went to the recording session where they recorded that song.
You're kidding.
No, why not? You kidding? Roy Orbison's agreed to record a song for your movie, and you don't show up?
Well, that's pretty cool.
So I got there, and Katie Lang was lovely, and she was recording her stuff, and he came out, and he had seen a screener of the movie, and he said, well, I saw your movie, and I really enjoyed it. But at that point, I thought that he was blind because he wears those glasses. So when he said he saw the movie, I said, oh, yeah, right, you saw the movie.
Speaking of you and Charlie Sheen and the television show 2.5 Men, which is a big hit for CBS and Channel 4 here in St. Louis, you guys did the People's Choice Awards a couple of years ago, and I just remember that being really, really funny. Was that most of that stuff scripted, or were you just guys sort of goofing that night?
Well, it was a combination of both, and the great thing was Charlie was petrified. He was absolutely petrified. At the rehearsal the day before, I looked over at one point, and his face broke out in this huge red rash. And I was like, oh, dude, it's okay. It's okay. It's just an award show. It's no big deal. Yeah. He's not used to live television.
Yeah. And I think we had you on the air about a year or so ago, and at the time, I remember making some reference to, oh, yeah, and does Denise Richards ever come around the set? Oh, I'm sure she does. And, of course, at the time, you, I'm sure, couldn't say anything, but I'm sure you also knew at that time that the whole thing was sort of on the rocks.
Well, interestingly, I knew at the same time he did. Literally. You knew at the same time he did. The whole thing blew up. The day after she filed, it was in the papers.
And that was the very first indication you had. You're working right alongside Charlie, and he doesn't ever sort of like mumble anything like, oh, my freaking wife's driving me out of my mind, or something like that.
But everybody does that. Come on.
Yeah. By the way, PCU was just on cable the other day, and I saw your ex-wife Sarah Trigger on that, who also had an amazing scene with Steve Martin and St. Louis's homeboy Kevin Kline in the limo scene of the movie Grand Canyon in 1989, one of my all-time favorite movies. So you got a 5-year-old son, and anybody who knows anything about episodic television, particularly these sitcoms, where in a lot of cases you go in very, very early and you get home very, very late at night, a good number of days of the week, is probably thinking, man, how the hell do you raise a 5-year-old son with a schedule like that?
Well, actually, divorce makes that easier. Because my ex has him on the 4 days of the week that I have heavy work, and then the 3 days of the week that I don't, I get him, and I get to spend all my time with him.
So it actually all works out. So learn from that, everybody. Get divorced right away.
Everybody's happy.
It's for the children.
Everybody's Most people, veterans of show business, will tell you maybe sometimes learn more from a show that fails than a show that is successful. At what point did you know the famous Teddy Z was in trouble?
Well, about 4 episodes in, one of the cast members just turned to me and said, we're done. And I was like, what? We lasted another, 10 episodes after that. But when your viewership is trending downward, you're done.
You were right in the thick of that whole John Hughes 1980s make one movie after another thing that he went through. John Hughes was just cranking out movies. It seemed like 3 or 4 a year for a while. You were in Pretty in Pink. What do you remember about that whole thing? And you were, as I said, were right in the middle of that whole success, that run that John Hughes had.
Well, he was really at the top of his game at that time. It was exciting to be a part of. I mean, I when I first met him, I was actually a fan of his more from his writing for National Lampoon than for the movies necessarily. And my first audition, I auditioned for the director of that movie, who was not actually John Hughes. It was a guy named Howie Deutsch. And it had gone well, so I moved up to the next level, which was meeting John Hughes. And he made you feel, when you met him, like you were the most important guy in the room. He was just so excited to work with young actors, and he just had this great sort of spirit that everybody just got on board with. He really wanted his actors to come up with a lot of dialogue and, change things and, bring a lot to the character. And it was weird because you sat there, you're going, I'm 18, and you want me to rewrite your movie?
And I guess that had something to do with maybe making the dialogue in the movie more authentic. If you, at 18, say, well, this is not what an 18-year-old kid would say, I guess that helps his movie out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he was completely open to it, and it was a great time. It was an amazing time.
What's coming up? What's coming up on Monday's show? What's coming up in the next couple of episodes? Can you give us any scoop at all?
Well, there's a young actor who's in Charlie's Family. His name is Martin Sheen, and he's going to be on the show. And I think he's got a future in this business.
All right.
He's pretty good. He's lovely and a total goofball, which you don't expect.
He's the president, right?
Exactly. But he was really a game guy and up for anything, and had a blast.
All right, well, congratulations. You got a hit show over there on CBS Channel 4 here in St. Louis. 2.5 Men. John Cryer, nice to talk with you again here in St. Louis.
Good to talk to you.
Two of the greatest singers that have ever been. Roy Orbison, who could hit 3 and sometimes 4 octaves, and Katie Lang, when she let loose, was like a cloud wall coming in with a thunderstorm. Just unbelievable. And from the motion picture soundtrack of Hiding Out, with our pal John Cryer, he just heard here on JC's Sunday Showgram. We're almost done. We'll come back with It Sucked Then, It Sucks Now next. In the meantime, we've beaten this one to death. Have a good one. See you later.
Men have always run things, and there have never been any problems whatsoever. And don't say the economy or Iraq or income inequality or racism or Brett Kavanaugh or air pollution or Vietnam or slavery or Watergate or capitalism or Me Too or homelessness or police brutality or homophobia or Monica Lewinsky or school shootings or Native American genocide or Fox News or Tim Allen or climate change.
You make a good point.
Bye?